Welcome to Twisted Fame, where the drama is real and the stories are wild. Support the channel by liking, subscribing, and commenting. Let's dive into today's story.
My therapist said faking amnesia was the only way to escape my perfect marriage. It worked for 6 months. Until my billionaire husband showed up with 2 plane tickets and said, "We're going to remember our love one way or another." My name is Aria, and for 5 years I lived inside a beautiful, perfect lie. My husband Alexander was not just a billionaire. He was a king, and our life was his kingdom. A Manhattan penthouse that was more museum than home, private jets to Monaco, jewels that were heavier than my regrets. I was the centerpiece of his perfect world, beautiful, polished, and silent. The world saw a fairy tale. They didn't see the cracks. They didn't see the coldness in his eyes when I laughed too loudly at a party. They didn't feel the crushing weight of his expectations, the way my every move was monitored, my every friend vetted. My life was a performance, and Alexander was a director who demanded perfection. Love. I'm not sure he was capable of it. I was his most prized possession, not his partner. The breaking point was a single cold night. I had suggested adopting a dog, a silly little thing to fill the echoing silence of our home. He'd looked at me over the rim of his crystal glass. His gaze so utterly devoid of warmth it froze the very air in my lungs. "Pets are messy, Aria," he said, his voice flat. "And unnecessary. You have everything you could possibly want. Everything but my freedom," I thought. Everything but a heartbeat that feels like my own. That night, as he slept beside me, a perfect, still statue even in rest, I knew I had to escape. But how? Alexander's reach was infinite. His security team was an extension of his own will. If I simply ran, he would find me. He would burn the world to the ground to retrieve what was his. I needed to disappear in a way he would never expect. I needed to make him let me go. The idea was born from a desperate, twisted place. Car accident. Not a serious one, just enough to sell the story. I drove my car into a tree on a rain-slicked road. When the paramedics found me, I looked at them with wide, blank eyes. "Who am I?" I whispered. The doctors called it dissociative amnesia, a rare but plausible trauma response. They told Alexander my memory was a blank slate. I would look at him, this devastatingly handsome, powerful stranger, and feel nothing but a vague, cold fear. I saw the shock in his eyes, the first crack in his perfect armor. He hired the best specialists, but my mind, according to them, was a fortress I had built myself out of. After 6 months of tests and therapies, a new doctor spoke to him. "Mr. Thorne," he said gently, "the constant reminders of a life she can't remember are causing her immense stress. It's hindering her recovery. She associates you with her trauma. The kindest thing might be to let her go." I was watching from my chair, pretending to be engrossed in a simple puzzle. I saw Alexander's face. I saw the war in his eyes, the possessive fury versus the cold, clinical logic. The logic won. He was a man who solved problems, and I had become one. He set me up in a small apartment with a new identity and a generous allowance. He signed the divorce papers without ever looking at me again. It was the greatest performance of my life, and I had won. For a year I was free. I lived in a small coastal town, painting seascapes for tourists, breathing the salty air without the scent of his cologne. I was finally Aria, whoever that was. Then, one sunny afternoon, a shadow fell over my easel. A familiar, expensive scent filled the air, one that haunted my dreams. My blood ran cold. I looked up. Alexander stood there, more handsome and more dangerous than I remembered. He wasn't angry. He was smiling, a cold, triumphant smile that promised I had never truly escaped. In his hand, he held 2 first-class plane tickets to Santorini. "Hello, Aria," he said. His voice a low, intimate caress that felt like a brand. "The amnesia was a brilliant move. I almost believed you." He leaned down, his eyes capturing mine, and uttered the words that shattered my new world. "The game is over. We're going on a second honeymoon." And I'm not coming back until you remember every single reason you were mine. The world tilted on its axis. The sounds of the seagulls and the ocean faded into a dull roar in my ears. He knew he had known all along. The entire year of freedom, every peaceful moment, had been an illusion. He had been watching, waiting, allowing me to think I had won. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I don't know what you're talking about, I stammered, the lie tasting like ash on my tongue. I had to cling to the act. It was my only shield. Alexander's cold, triumphant smile didn't falter. He reached into the inner pocket of his impeccably tailored suit jacket. My breath hitched. But it wasn't a weapon he pulled out. It was a slim silver USB drive. He placed it gently on top of my half-finished painting of the sea, a grotesque violation of the one pure thing I had created. "Your therapist, Dr. Evans," he said. His voice conversational, as if discussing the weather. "A good man. Excellent credentials. But terribly in debt. A man in debt is a man who can be bought." My blood ran cold. Dr. Evans had been my primary advocate, the one who had convinced Alexander to let me go. "His notes were very thorough," Alexander continued. His gaze locked on mine, dissecting my every flinch. "He documented your progress in exquisite detail. The way you consistently showed no physiological response to images of our home, our life, me. It was all very convincing. Until I had my own experts analyze the data." He took a step closer, and I instinctively stepped back, my legs hitting my stool. The human body area cannot consciously control its subconscious responses. Pupil dilation, micro-expressions, heart rate variability. He picked up the USB drive, rolling it between his fingers. "Your body recognized me. Even when your mind was supposedly a blank slate. You were lying. Beautifully. Flawlessly. But you were lying." The meticulousness of his revenge was terrifying. He hadn't stormed in and dragged me away. He had gathered forensic evidence. He had built a case against my performance. All this, for a year. I whispered, the fight draining out of me. "You let me live this lie for a whole year just to prove a point." "Not just to prove a point, my love," he said, his voice dropping to an intimate, dangerous whisper. "To teach you one. I needed you to truly understand the depth of your failure. To taste freedom, to believe it was yours, and then to learn that it was only ever a leash I had temporarily lengthened." He gestured to the 2 plane tickets. "Now you have a choice. You can come with me willingly to Santorini. We will revisit the places we honeymooned. We will retrace the steps of our life together. And you will, piece by piece. Remember. Or," I asked, my voice trembling. "Or," he said, his eyes turning to ice. "I will expose you. I will have you declared mentally incompetent for faking a severe neurological condition. I will have your new identity revoked. Every painting you've sold, every friend you've made here. It will all vanish. You will not be Alara, the free-spirited artist. You will be Aria Thorne, the unstable, pathological liar, and you will be remanded to my custody as your legal guardian. Permanently." The cruelty of the choice was breathtaking. One path was a gilded prison of his making, where I had to perform the role of a repentant wife rediscovering her love. The other was a clinical, public annihilation of everything I was, ending in the same prison, but stripped of all dignity. I looked at my small, sun-drenched studio, at the simple life I had built with my own hands. I thought of the kindly old woman who ran the bakery downstairs, the fellow artists who shared coffee with me. He would destroy it all without a second thought. Tears of sheer helplessness welled in my eyes. I had used my mind as a weapon against him, and he had not only disarmed me. He had turned my own weapon into my shackles. I looked at the man I had married, the man I had feared, the man I had run from. His expression was one of absolute, unshakable certainty. He had already won. This was just the formality. With a shaking hand, I reached out and took the plane ticket from his hand. The paper felt like a death sentence. A slow, satisfied smile spread across his perfect features. Wise choice. He took my duffel bag from the floor and began calmly, methodically, packing my art supplies, my clothes, my life. He was erasing me again. As he zipped the bag closed, he turned to me, his gaze sweeping over my paint-stained jeans and simple t-shirt with disdain. "Let's go, Arya," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "It's time to go home." I took one last longing look at the sea through my window, then followed him out the door. The hunter had found his prey, and the second honeymoon was about to begin. Santorini was a dream painted in blinding white and impossible blue. The same dream it had been 5 years ago. Now it was my gilded prison, more exquisite and more suffocating than any penthouse. Our villa was a masterpiece of luxury, carved into the cliffside with a private infinity pool that seemed to spill directly into the Aegean Sea. It was the exact same villa from our first honeymoon. Every detail was a calculated weapon. Alexander was a different man here. The cold, furious billionaire was gone, replaced by a charming, attentive husband. It was the most terrifying performance I had ever witnessed. "Do you remember this view, my love?" he asked on the first evening, handing me a glass of chilled Acertico wine as we stood on the terrace. The sunset was a violent, beautiful explosion of orange and purple. "You said it was like standing at the edge of heaven." I took a sip of the wine, the taste familiar and unsettling. "It's very beautiful," I said, my voice neutral. His smile was soft, but his eyes were sharp, watching for any crack in my facade. "You cried that first night. You said you were so happy it hurt." I had forgotten that. The memory, real and unbidden, sent a pang through my heart. I had been so young, so desperately in love with the idea of this powerful man loving me. I quickly buried the feeling. "I don't recall." His hand found the small of my back, a possessive, warm weight. "You will." This was his strategy. A relentless, gentle assault on my senses. He took me to the same restaurants, ordered the same dishes I had loved. He played the music we had danced to. He would point to a secluded cove and say, "We swam there at midnight," his voice a low, intimate whisper in my ear. He was trying to awaken a ghost, and with each passing hour, I felt the phantom limbs of my old self twitching back to life. The part of me that had loved him was not entirely dead. It was a sleeping beast he was determined to rouse. The real torture began on the third day. We were sailing on his private yacht, the same one from our past. He was at the helm, his shirt off, the sun glinting off his tan skin and the faint scars that hinted at a life I never truly knew. He looked like a god, powerful and untouchable. He turned to me, his gaze intense. "You were afraid of the water. Did you know that? When we first met, I had never told him that." A chill that had nothing to do with the sea breeze crept up my spine. "I taught you to swim right here," he continued, his voice softening with a genuine nostalgia that shocked me. "You were so stubborn, so brave. You hated showing weakness in front of me." He walked towards me, the boat rocking gently. He stopped just inches away, his presence overwhelming. "You trusted me enough to let me hold you in the deep water. You trembled, but you never asked me to let you go." His words were a key, unlocking a chest of memories I had sealed shut. The feel of his strong arms around me, the safety I felt even while terrified, the way he looked at me not with pity, but with fierce pride. "Why are you doing this, Alexander?" I whispered, my defenses crumbling. "You know the truth. Why this charade?" The charming mask slipped, and for a fleeting second, the raw, possessive man beneath was visible. "Because I don't just want you to admit you lied. I want you to remember why you lied. I want you to remember what we were. What we could be again." He cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheek. The touch was no longer just a performance. It was a demand. "The contract you signed, the prenup. It has a clause. In the event of a divorce initiated under fraudulent circumstances, all assets revert to me. You would be left with nothing." My breath caught. I had never read the fine print. I'd been too young, too infatuated. But that's not what I want, he murmured, his lips close to mine. I don't want to ruin you, Aria. I want to reclaim you. Confess. Tell me the truth, and all is forgiven. We go back to how we were. How we were. A beautiful, lonely cage. The temptation was a sinister whisper. To give up the fight, to surrender to this powerful, intoxicating man and the life of luxury he offered. It would be so easy. But then I looked into his eyes and I saw it. It wasn't forgiveness he was offering. It was surrender he was demanding. He didn't want a partner. He wanted his possession back, fully compliant. I pulled away, my heart aching with a confusing mix of old love and fresh defiance. I have nothing to confess, I said, my voice trembling but clear. My memory is gone. Perhaps it's gone for a reason. For a moment, pure, unadulterated fury flashed in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that cool, determined calm. The hunter was back. As you wish, he said, turning back to the helm. We have all the time in the world, my love. And I am a very, very patient man. As the yacht cut through the crystal blue water, I realized the true horror of my situation. He wasn't just trying to make me remember. He was trying to make me fall in love with him all over again, knowing it would be my ultimate defeat. And the most terrifying part was the tiny, traitorous part of my soul that was already starting to remember what it felt like to be his. The tension in our villa was a physical presence, thick and suffocating. Alexander's charming husband act had vanished, replaced by a cold, watchful silence. He was a predator waiting for his prey to make a fatal mistake. I was drowning in the memories he kept unearthing, each one a chain trying to bind me back to a self I had killed to survive. The breaking point came over a simple, brutal dinner. He had ordered my favorite dish, a delicate seafood pasta I hadn't tasted in over a year. The scent of garlic and lemon brought back a flood of sensations. The feel of a silk gown, the sound of clinking crystal, the crushing weight of his expectations. You're remembering something, he stated, his voice cutting through the quiet. It wasn't a question. I pushed the food around my plate, my appetite gone. No. Don't lie to me, Aria, he said, his tone dangerously soft. Your tells are subtle, but I know them all. The way you bite your lower lip when you're nervous. The slight tremor in your left hand. You're remembering. The fact that he knew my body's language better than I did was a violation. I slammed my fork down. What do you want from me, Alex? You have me here. You've won. Why can't you just let the past be the past? Because the past is the key to our future, he shot back, his own control finally snapping. He stood up, his chair scraping against the stone floor. I am not a man who accepts loss. I do not accept that my wife looked at me, the man who gave her the world, and decided it wasn't enough. I need to know why. Maybe the world you gave me was a cage. I cried, standing to face him, all my pent-up fear and anger erupting. Maybe the jewels were shackles and the penthouses were prisons. Did you ever think of that? His face was a mask of thunderous confusion. A cage. I protected you. I sheltered you. I gave you a life every woman on the planet dreams of. You never saw me. The words tore from my throat, raw and true. You saw a beautiful object to complete your perfect picture. You never asked me what I wanted. You never asked me if I was happy. I didn't have to ask, he roared, stepping closer, his presence overwhelming. I provided everything. What more could you possibly have wanted? Love. The word echoed in the vast open space, hanging between us like a ghost. I was breathing heavily, tears streaming down my face now. I wanted you to look at me like I was a person, not a prize. I wanted you to love me, not just own me. The fury on his face seemed to stutter. He stared at me, his chest heaving. For the first time he looked lost. I did love you, he said, his voice low and rough, stripped bare of all its calculated charm. In my way. In your way. I repeated, a broken laugh escaping me. Your way was control. Your way was coldness. Your way was making me feel so alone in a crowd of 1,000 people that I thought I was going insane. I saw the impact of my words hit him. It was like watching a fortress begin to crumble, stone by stone. The absolute certainty in his eyes fractured, replaced by a dawning, horrifying realization. He was silent for a long time, just staring at me as if he were truly seeing me for the first time. Not as his wife, not as his possession, but as a woman he had broken. All this time, he whispered, almost to himself. I thought you were ungrateful. I thought you were betraying me by wanting more. I never understood that I was the one who was failing you. He took a step back, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, disheveling it. The gesture was so uncharacteristically vulnerable it stole my breath. The accident, he said slowly, his gaze sharpening on me again, but with a new, terrifying clarity. You didn't just want to escape me. You were truly unhappy. You were so desperate that crashing a car and faking amnesia seemed like a better option than a single more day with me. It wasn't a question. It was a confession. His confession. The fight drained out of me, leaving behind a hollow, aching exhaustion. The truth was out. The carefully constructed walls between us lay in ruins. He knew I had faked it, and I knew that he finally understood why. He didn't look triumphant. He looked shattered. The great Kalen Thorne, the man who could move markets and command armies, was brought to his knees not by a business rival, but by the simple, devastating truth from the wife he had never truly known. He turned and walked out onto the terrace, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the starry night. He didn't speak. He just stood there, alone with the wreckage of his own understanding. I stood frozen in the ruins of our dinner, my heart pounding. The game was over, but I had no idea what came next. I had wanted him to see the truth, but I had never imagined the truth would break him. And the terrifying, undeniable ache in my chest at the sight of his pain told me a truth I had been fighting for a year. The part of me that had once loved him was not a ghost. It was very, very alive. He didn't speak to me for the rest of the night. I heard the soft click of the villa's main door as he left, and the silence that followed was heavier than any argument. The confrontation had left me raw, every nerve ending exposed. I had won. I had finally made him see the truth of our gilded cage. So why did I feel like I had lost something vital? I couldn't sleep. The memory of his shattered expression haunted me. I wandered the villa, my fingers trailing over the cold, perfect surfaces. In the study a light was on. His laptop was open on the desk. A reckless, desperate curiosity pulled me toward it. What did a man like Kalen do when his entire worldview had been upended? There were no spreadsheets, no business emails. On the screen was a simple folder, labeled A. With a trembling hand I clicked it open. It was a digital scrapbook. But not of the glamorous life we had led. These were the moments in between. A photo of me, fast asleep on a library couch, a book open on my chest. A video, taken from a security camera, of me laughing uncontrollably while trying to bake a cake, my face smeared with flour. A voice recording just a few seconds long of me humming a tune I'd made up. He had been watching. Not with a jailer's cold eye, but with something else. Something aching and possessive. He had been cataloging the small, unguarded moments I never knew he saw. Then I found the subfolder. The year. My breath caught. It was a log of my entire year of freedom. Pictures of me painting on the beach. A video of me sharing a coffee with a fellow artist. A receipt from the local bakery. He had known where I was every single day. He had watched me build my new life, a silent, unseen guardian. But there was more. Documents. A restraining order filed against a man who had been harassing me at the art market, mysteriously approved and enforced. A report on the fellow artist I'd had coffee with, revealing he had a history of scamming women. Alex had been protecting me from the shadows, weeding out threats I never knew existed. The final file was a single document, dated the week before he came for me. It was a deed. The deed to my little art studio, purchased in my new name. He hadn't just found me. He had quietly, anonymously, bought my freedom for me, ensuring my landlord couldn't suddenly evict me. I stumbled back from the desk, my hand over my mouth. This wasn't the portrait of a cold, controlling monster. This was the story of a deeply broken man who had no idea how to love. So he obsessed, he controlled. He protected in the only way he knew how. His love was a twisted, possessive thing, but it was real. It was the only kind of love he was capable of. I found him on the lowest terrace, sitting on the edge of the infinity pool. His feet in the water, staring out at the dark sea. He looked younger, stripped of his armor of power and certainty. I walked over and sat beside him, the cool water lapping at my ankles. We sat in silence for a long time, the truth a living thing between us. "I remember," I said softly, my voice barely a whisper over the waves. He went perfectly still. "I remember the first time I saw you," I continued, the memories flooding back, not as weapons but as gifts. "I was so nervous I spilled my drink. You didn't get angry. You just handed me your napkin. I remember the night you taught me to swim. I was so afraid but I trusted you. I remember loving you so much it terrified me." I turned to look at him. Tears were streaming down my face, but they were clean tears, tears of release. I faked amnesia because the pain of loving you and feeling so unseen by you was worse than any physical injury. It was a slow death of the soul. He finally turned his head, his stormy eyes glistening in the moonlight. The raw pain in them was breathtaking. "I am so sorry, Aria," he rasped, his voice thick with an emotion I had never heard from him before. True, unvarnished remorse. "I am so sorry I failed you. I am so sorry I made you feel so alone." He reached out, his hand hovering near my cheek, a question in his touch. "Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at this man, my husband, the mafia boss of my heart. He was cruel to the world, but he had burned it down for me. He was fierce in his control, but he had used it to build a fortress around me, even when I didn't know it. His love was a twisted, tangled vine, but at its root, it was real. I placed my hand over his, guiding it to my cheek. "There is nothing to forgive," I whispered. "We were both lost. We both built prisons for each other." A shuddering breath escaped him. He leaned his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. "Teach me," he pleaded, his voice raw. "Teach me how to love you the way you deserve. I will spend the rest of my life learning." In that moment, I didn't remember the coldness or the control. I remembered the man who saved every piece of me, even the pieces I thought were worthless. I remembered the man who, in his own broken way, had loved me all along. "I will," I promised. And as his lips met mine under the Santorini stars, it wasn't a surrender. It wasn't a victory. It was the beginning. The real memory wasn't of a perfect past. It was the promise of a future we would build together, not as a king and his captive, but as two broken souls who had finally found their way home. A love forged in fire, tested by lies, and redeemed by truth. Their twisted tale proves that even the most broken hearts can find their way home. Red Heart, smash the like button if you believed in their second chance at love. Bell subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss our next twisted romance. Love letter, share this story with someone who loves complex love stories. Your support helps us create more unforgettable stories of passion, redemption, and twisted love, where every love story has a dark side. Until next time, stay twisted.